So I actually meant to hit stop recording, and I actually hit hang up instead. But hey, it served the same. It did the same thing. It stopped the recording.
Right. Yes.
All right. Cool. So let's just start then. Let's start. This is interesting. This is probably, I think this is the fourth interview I've done with you for a podcast.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
So,
And with me, I haven't launched my podcast yet, and so I'm totally getting you on, man. Like, you're like going to be one of the first 5 people I'm getting on a podcast.
That's awesome. So, if it's funny because somebody could listen to the podcast and probably probably get like a full history of you, because I think I first interviewed you for my Business and Blogs podcast probably 5 years ago.
Yeah, and it was like all about YouTube at the time, right?
Yeah, we were talking about YouTube at the time, and then we had you on the Beyond the Hype podcast with me and Josh, and that time we were talking about webinars, right? And then here we are again. We also created some Periscope training somewhere in there, and here we are for our 4th session together, but for a new podcast talking about some new topics.
But this is interesting because it's like this growth, we're like seeing how both of us, are growing, as we've been doing this thing, So it's an interesting thing to be able to see the different the different hairstyles we both used to have.
Oh, I've had quite a few too. When I first started my business, my hair was down to my shoulders.
Oh my gosh.
And then a few months later I had a buzzed head, and now I just kind of have like a normal men's side part haircut, but
I know. Yeah, and my hair has gotten a little shorter. I have glasses. I mean, I haven't really changed all that much. I think that I was just more like scruffy looking, trying to be less.
I think
scruffy.
You got buffer too.
I may have gotten buffer.
Yeah.
I think I've gotten thinner. More like MMA thinner, not necessarily thicker. But yeah, things have been. It's interesting. Like, we've gone through so many different businesses and different when it comes to knowing some of the things that we know, it's like we have the experience behind it because we've been doing it so long.
It's true. So let's just kind of do a real quick recap of your story. Let's talk about how you became an entrepreneur and how you started your own business. Okay.
Well, so with me, you know the story probably is I was an actor a long time ago. Not a long time ago, like 2009 or 2000. I went to school for acting and opera, and then I did shows in various places around, the country, and came to LA to finally, get into more TV shows. Ended up doing okay, but I always hated the fact that didn't hate it, but I was like, I was really frustrated by the fact that I still was going job to job in terms of acting. Like, I was still held within this bubble, this box, right? Even as an actor. And so I was essentially sick of being a broke actor. So I went into real estate. And while I was in real estate, I did really, really well, but I wasn't really passionate about it. It was just, I was getting on cold calls, and I was like, I would literally get the lead in front of me, dial it up, go to the next lead, paper, it's like stamp. It was so monotonous. So, every day was like that it was a blessing and a curse when the market crashed, because I went from, doing 6 figures to then making $15,000 the year after the recession hit. And I almost lost my house twice. And at that time I was thinking, well, listen, I have to hack my way into figuring out how I'm going to do better with this stuff. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to start looking online to figure out how I can build leads, because that was one of the biggest issues. And then I thought, maybe I'll go into become a financial advisor and then build leads online. So I started going to get my Series 7 license, right? Whatever it was called. Mm-hmm. I can't even remember now, but I was thinking that this was the plan. And I started looking online at lead generation. And the first experiences of lead generation was pretty much MLM stuff. Like, I was seeing Jonathan Budd style stuff, popping up everywhere. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. So these people are online gurus. Okay, so I think I understand. I could never get to that place where they are. And, the more I started learning, the more I started looking at video, because I thought, video was this wonderful way of kind of bridging the gap of impersonality. I saw other people using it, and that led me to YouTube. And you know, it kind of also brought me back into my passion of acting, which the reason I went into acting in the first place was to get an emotional response from someone. And so I thought, you know, I'm going to learn more about video because I'm going to be able to get in front of the camera. I'm good in front of the camera. I could talk and start, you know, talking about, you know, how I can help people. So I started to check it out, and the nagging thing in the back of my mind was I still don't want to do this whole financial advising thing. So one day, Diana, my wife, said, hey, maybe we should have lunch with my friend Frida and her husband, because her husband is, I think he creates HTML pages. And I was like, or taught himself HTML. And at the time I was like, well, whatever. That has nothing to do with online marketing and building leads. So I met these two for lunch, my wife and I and this other couple. Turns out this person was Chris Farrell. And Chris, at the time, you know, I considered him, you know, he was like a guru to me. So I was like, this is the guy that's going to show me how to do it. So he told me pretty much what he was doing. And I noticed this world of online marketers teaching other people that want to learn online marketing. So is this like interesting place that I kind of saw, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to move into this space somehow. And I was, and one of the best pieces of advice was from Chris Farrell, who's a friend of mine today. It was choose one thing. So I then went into YouTube and immersed myself into YouTube, just learning as much as I could about it. And eventually, I started getting consulting clients from it. You know, one of the first video marketers out there, I think, is, you know, no one was really doing it at the time. So I got some clients. Some clients were Estee Lauder, Dell, and I started doing some video marketing campaigns. But I still noticed this issue that I couldn't build leads into my own business. So I did the consulting thing for about a year, and I made actually decent money. I kept myself afloat, right, somehow with this consulting thing. But I was still a service. But I was still learning all this stuff. And at the same time, I was building a YouTube training course while going through it. And then, so while that was happening, I built my first YouTube course. And I can tell you the only way that I ever made money, the only way, was finally creating that YouTube course, putting it in a members area, and selling that course on webinars to joint venture partners that I met through this, you know, through relationship building, through, you know, being around these guys in Facebook, or, you know, I don't know how I met, like, for instance, you were one of the first ones that I actually did a webinar with. I
remember that, yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, at that, and so it was that's how I started off. And then eventually one night, I probably had some bad pizza, and I was like, you know what? I asked my friend Brian Bagnall. I said, Brian, what's trending now? What's interesting in the marketplace now? He was like, well, the webinars, obviously, and then it's automated webinars, so kind of people are talking about them. And so I was like, okay. But I noticed there was no automated webinar for WordPress, and that's when I started building out EasyWebinar for WordPress. And that's what it became. Then it became live and automated, right? So we kind of went through this iteration with EasyWebinar. And, you know, now this year we're going to push out our SaaS model, which is, you know, fully hosted by us and everything. So this was kind of like my growth. You know, I went from, you know, being on real estate, losing all my money and then, you know, that first year that I was online, I made $265,000 selling my online products, and built a list of about 14,000 people within my first year of finally selling online after I created my course. And then from there, you know, we just did a launch. You know, we created the software, and it sold. It continued like to double every year, the revenue, and then we did a launch, and, you know, so it became a 7-figure business, you know, eventually. And, you know, now I create software and training that essentially help people to build their business and brand using the top engagement strategies of webinar, video and live video, which is now my favorite thing ever is live video. So it's not quite a webinar. It's like live streaming. It's like this whole new world that I've just immersed myself in because I love it. It's video, but it's the next evolution of video. So that's kind of what I do now. So we created Fullscope.tv, which is a marketing and analytic tool for Periscope, and Periscope is a new app for your iPhone that streams out live, and it's been an amazing thing to see how many people have moved into this platform to build their authority, to build their expertise. Michael Hyatt said that this was probably one of the best ways to build authority. He was like, Periscope is the ultimate authority builder.
Oh yeah.
It was an interesting, and it's been a very true experience. From what from my own experiences. Yeah,
I didn't even know that. I mean, I knew obviously that you were friends with Chris, but I didn't realize he was kind of one of those guys that gave you that nudge into this world.
yeah. That story I don't know if I share all that often. I mean, he and I met each other a few times even before he was even in internet marketing, because my wife and Frida are friends, and so. It was just kismet that happened, and that's when I was like, well, that actually allowed me to say this is possible. That's what it was. Not so much that I'm going to do exactly what he's doing, but this is possible because I saw the stuff online. I was like, this is all bull. Come on. I can't. How am I supposed to believe that this is actually something, that these guys are gurus and they're making 7 figures and 8 figures online? I couldn't believe it until I sat down with somebody that was doing it, you know? And then that's where I was like, well, if he can do it, then I can do it. And then that gave me the reason to kind of stick with it and kind of listen to how he was doing it. So
yeah, and I love that Periscope is the ultimate authority builder. One thing that I've kind of noticed about Periscope is that, I feel like there's a lot of people that just won't do it. People are just so uncomfortable pointing the camera at themselves and putting themselves out there on live streaming video. And I think the fact that so many people are unwilling to do it, it scares so many people that the people that are doing it have sort of an instant credibility just by doing it,
Yeah, absolutely. When I started using Periscope, because, it came out, March of 2015, right? And I had people that were using it that were in my community, and they were like, this new thing is so cool. And I ignored it for a while. I was like, oh, it's another thing. It's like Twitter created this thing. And I wasn't really into social at the time. Like, I was doing stuff with Facebook, but I wasn't, in Facebook ads and things like that, but I wasn't really doing anything with Twitter. And it was like 3 months after that when I finally started playing with Periscope, and I was immediately hooked. And I started consuming some content of the people that were like the biggest of the big on Periscope. And it was amazing to see, because I, just like everybody else, was like, these are like celebrities, right? Like, and that's kind of what it creates. It created this like instant celebrity status for people, because you'd see people that would have 300, 400, 500, 600 people on a broadcast, and you'd be like, wow, how do they have that many people? It's this platform that was growing incredibly fast, and that's how I jumped in. I jumped in and was like, I'm going to try to build a following with this thing. And from what I noticed, I was getting like 20, 30 leads a day coming from Periscope. I was seeing maybe $300 to $500 I could account for coming into my business, whether it was people that were already within my existing platform, right? That were already, people that followed me. And now on Periscope, they could really get a stronger sense of my person, right? Or it was brand new people that were, coming into my broadcast and coming to more than one, and finally getting on my list. I was getting them onto my subscriber list by giving them great, content, essentially saying, hey, if you want to learn all about webinars, go to webinar mini course or caseyzeman.com/webinar, or, would you like to have a live stream resource guide? Go to, go here. And so doing all this was like, a really, I was excited about it. I was noticing I didn't necessarily have the bandwidth to do as many as I wanted to do, but because when I was doing it, I was trying to do 3 a day, and it was just really tough. But I noticed that it was it was instantaneous. It was amazing. And now, since then, I have like, thousands of broadcasters that are using our software. And, I just came back from the Periscope Summit, and, it's incredible how much of a family they all consider each other, because they consume each other's broadcasts, So it's amazing how, you start something and then you end up being kind of a part of it. And then as I was telling you, being at the summit, I was one of the sponsors. Fullscope was one of the sponsors. I taught about, how to tap into your people while there. And we talked about broadcasting tools, whether those were software, whether they were like different like things like this, LED phone. This guy right here, this LED phone case that really is great for doing filming. It has LED lights on the side. All these new things are coming out because live streaming is becoming so powerful, and you can do it from your devices, like your iPhone device.
Yeah. So what kind of numbers are you getting when you turn on Periscope right now and you hit live? What kind of numbers typically do you get?
It always depends on the topic. It always depends on the topic. It always depends on the title, because I can still have as little as 20 people on my broadcast, right? But if I'm doing something that is a really great topic, and if I have enough that I'm talking about, sometimes we can get into the hundreds, from doing Periscope. So and oftentimes I'm doing like full scope updates from Periscope. So I have a lot of people following me on Periscope that are also users of fullscope.tv, the software. So yeah, it really depends on the title, and the nice thing is I can go into Fullscope and kind of take a look and see, well, why did this title do better than this title?
Yeah.
And oftentimes, I can do a giveaway. Those always bring way more people in too. And that's something you can do with Fullscope. So
what kind of stuff would you do on a giveaway? Like, how would you structure a giveaway if you were doing a Periscope giveaway?
Yeah. So what I'll oftentimes do, and I'm showing you this while we're doing it. Like I would have a book, right? And I'd hold up the book in front of like my screen, my camera, and I'd say, "Hey everybody, thank you so much for being here. We're going to be talking about X, Y, and Z topic today. And I just want to let you know the person that is the most engaged on this broadcast, you're asking the most questions, you're staying the longest, you're sending the most hearts, you're taking screenshots, you're sharing, will win this free book, right? Where I'll send it out to you." Now, I don't always do that, Matt. I kind of like...
Well, yeah.
You can't always try to bribe someone to have engagement. But I think the idea is that, you can run contests. Like, funny enough, we had people that were running contests while we were at the Periscope Summit in real time, and then they were sitting at our booth, and one woman gave away, she gave away 2 of these Lumi cases, right? She went to the Lumi booth and she said, "Hey, can I give away your case? And I'm going to do a giveaway." Then she gave them away. She said, "I'm going to look at Fullscope to figure out who's the most engaged." And then as soon as she was done doing the Periscope, she went into Fullscope, saw the person that was her most engaged viewer, right? And then she immediately tweeted out from Twitter or from a Fullscope to that person to say, "Hey, you were my most engaged. Thank you for coming. I'm going to send this in the mail." And so people were literally doing that at our booth in front of us. So it's like, it's a great way to build your community, get more people that are going to start following you, and etc. And it helps to also grow your list as well. So that's the type of thing that I think is kind of important. Like also consuming other people's broadcasts are really important. And I noticed that the more I do that, the more I get to come into mine. Like if I'm going into someone's broadcast, they're going to come into mine because they're going to say, "Oh, he was at my broadcast."
Yeah. So you and I, we did kind of a full Periscope training that's inside the Authority Insiders member area. So we won't dive, super deep into all these different strategies. But one thing I do want to kind of talk about is some strategies to get more people following you on Periscope, because I think that's probably most people's struggle when they first turn on Periscope and do a broadcast. And one thing that I found fascinating was the first time I ever did a broadcast, I think like 3 random people popped in. I'm like, who are you and where did you come from? So I feel like just by doing a broadcast, you're going to get a few people jumping on.
Yeah.
But how do you grow that following? Obviously, doing one of these contests is probably a great way to get people paying attention and jumping on. But other than that, what are some little tips you'd give to get more people following you on Periscope?
So here's the thing. It's really it's even more so. It's not so much about one individual broadcast that you do, but it's more so about consistent broadcasts, maybe once a day or once every other day. And by creating this consistency and making sure that the audience knows who you are, what you're teaching, and that stays relatively consistent, you'll notice that you will build the community up that is most targeted for you. Like that's what I've noticed. Like going into Full Scope, I can see my most engaged people over not just in one broadcast, but over all of my broadcasts. So I can say these are the top 50 people that consistently consume my content. And you weed out the people that don't know you, right? So the people that aren't really interested, like as you said, like 3 randos coming into your Periscope, that doesn't really happen for me. Most of the people that come in, they know me, right? And they share. And so the more consistent you are, and the more you talk about what you bring, how you can help someone, like solving a problem for them through your broadcasts, or maybe just building that relationship with them consistently, the more consistency you will have in people showing up to your broadcasts. Right. And, I could tell you all day long that you could, have open loops in your titles, or make sure you have hashtags or even emojis in your titles that will allow people to see exactly what your broadcasts are, through hashtag search and things like that. But at the end of the day, the bigger thing is going to be the consistency factor and that consistent audience coming back. Because the more they come back, the more their return people, the more they'll share with their folks to come back again, right? So they'll say, hey, I see when Casey starts his broadcast, I'm always there because he's got something he's going to say that I can find value in, right? So if I had to give like one, relatively good piece of advice, is try to stay consistent with value on your broadcasts. Don't always broadcast everything. That's also another thing I would say. When I just would broadcast, hey, I'm at a party, it's really cool, I don't really get all that many people showing up, Right. But when I broadcast, hey, I'm going to be talking about 4 things that you can do in your broadcast to help you grow your audience, that gets way more people because it's clear, concise value, right? So I would say the biggest thing you could do is provide value, have it related to your niche, to your business, whatever it is, and try to create a consistency around it. But don't feel like you always have to create a broadcast every day, 3 times a day to do that. You don't want to burn yourself out. So what I did is I created like a list of like 40 topics. Since then they've changed a bit, but 40 topics that were right around my niche, and that's what I would suggest for someone who's just starting out. Like, create an idea of what you're going to do. You don't have to have it rehearsed. Just write down some bullet points on what you're going to cover, and then go.
So if your first Periscope broadcast, let's say you turn it on and it's going out to 0 people, nobody tunes in. Maybe you don't have much of a Twitter following or something like that. And then the second one, maybe you still have 0, or just like one person randomly pops in that finds it through Periscope. Like, is there any sort of ways to get discovered so that people can start to see your
just like anything, like relationships. Relationships are probably the biggest thing. So finding other broadcasters who are within your niche, that is probably one of the most powerful things you could possibly do, is finding other people who can promote your broadcast out. And that was one of the biggest things for me. I mean, I remember early on, I got Kim Garst I did an interview with Kim Garst, and she talked about my broadcast, and it went out to a lot of people, you know, and I got a lot of followers from it. What I also did is I would put at different influencers' names in my title, and I would say these are the people to follow. And by doing so, those people actually ended up coming in because that showed up in their news feed, right?
Yeah, smart.
And that's some of the early things I was doing where I was seeing like, oh, there's some cool things you could do here. That brings more people in. Having hashtags also are really powerful for, really, kind of separating the wheat from the chaff. Like you wanna make sure that if you're gonna put something in like hashtag business or online marketing or hashtag titling your Periscopes or hashtag Periscope tips. I noticed that one to be really one that works quite well. Those things, if you consume other people's broadcasts and you are giving value in their broadcasts, they will in turn come to you and give value to yours, right? That's the idea. Build relationships, just like any kind of like what we know how to do with online marketing. It's all about leveraging the relationship with somebody else who may have a platform as well. And that helps with authority, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Relationships are one element of authority, and then the other is already providing value to your audience. That second really, really important part of it. And oftentimes, if you provide value to your audience, you'll build that relationship with somebody else who's like, "Hey, I really liked your broadcast today or your podcast today. Let's have a conversation." That spurs a relationship. Now you have somebody else who's potentially there as someone to promote you or someone to talk about you, rather than you having to blow your own horn. It's really not about that. It's like they can come in and do it.
Yeah.
So,
and I've constantly, I feel like I've said this a bunch on the podcast throughout various episodes, but I feel like the kind of number one thing that has built my authority, that's built my personal brand, has been the networking element, the element of growing those connections and connecting with more people. And how do you connect with more people? How do you grow that network? Well, you figure out what you can do for them. You figure out how you can give a shout out to them. You figure out how to get on their radar by pointing people to them. One of the best blogging strategies, and this is sort of a side topic, but very, very related to Periscope. One of the best blogging strategies to get people to your blog is do a list post of like the 10 best blogs on X topic, right? Yes. And then you list those 10 people's blogs, and then you go and tag all of them on Twitter and let them know you mentioned them. The next thing you know, you're now connected with that person. You're on their radar, and that's how those networks start to happen. Well, with Periscope, it sounds like you have a very similar strategy, or at least in the beginning, you had a very similar strategy where you get on Periscope, you'd give shout outs to other people that you think your following should also be following, and that starts that momentum for building that network.
That's exactly right. And that's how I've also grew some of the business stuff too. Like with EasyWebinar, I started reaching out to authorities that I could potentially help. Whether they reached out to me first or I reached out to them, both happened. So like when someone like Ryan Lee, reaches out and he's like, "Hey, I want to put together a webinar." I first off don't charge him. I say, let's get it together. We suddenly get it together, and then it's working for him. Then he wants to promote it. I mean, it's a natural evolution. Like that's in fact what's been kind of going on. Another person, and that's what I did with John Lee Dumas back in the day. When he was only doing his live stuff, suddenly going and doing automated stuff. I wanted to help him with getting that set up. So I went and did it all. I didn't ask for money. It wasn't about that, because it was more about having him succeed with it, because if he succeeds, I succeed. So it just made sense, and that goes, back to I guess a twofold plan where you should be providing value and giving to other people, and help them with their pain points first. Because again, if they succeed, you succeed. So I do that with authorities, but at the same time, I also do it for anyone because Fullscope.tv is free at the moment. And, people have been signing up and they can use it. And, from that, we get all these people that are like, this has helped me so much, saving my time. I can run contests that help me build my platform. And when I was at the summit, I heard that over and over again, and it made me feel, it was great to hear. But that's one thing that will help you to kind of position yourself, if that's your goal, as that authority. I don't even think you should look at it as authority. Almost look at it as, as what can I give what can I create that people need, and then give it to them. Whether that's a software that everybody can consume and then they can find extreme value from it, or it's maybe blog posts that are hugely valuable, rich in content like what Matt does, that ultimately help them with a problem. Doing those elements plus the relationship side and the strategic relationship side, by still having that same mentality that I just mentioned, but now for the experts, now you've created a whole, authority strategy, essentially, for getting your products out there more, but also building up your own internal platform through, just by helping everyone, essentially.
Yeah. So I want to segue a little bit into the actual Fullscope.tv, and this isn't a pitch, obviously, because it's it's a free software. So, but I do want to talk about it I want to talk about it for a minute because I've actually never used it. Maybe you and I can make a separate video or something where you give me kind of a little insider tour of how it works.
Yeah,
but
sure.
What sort of metrics does it track, and how does it help you be a better Periscoper?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Periscoper. Either one's fine. So I think that the biggest problem that we were seeing, when I started doing Periscope, was that I saw that I was building my list and I was making some money, but I couldn't account for who was coming to my broadcasts and I just didn't know any metrics behind it, right? And it was interesting to be at the Periscope Summit because you have a lot of artists and creative people and entertainers who are using, Periscope to build their community. And some of them were like, I love Fullscope. I use it for a couple things. I know I could do more, but I'm not really, the data, I'm not a numbers person. And that got me thinking that, why is this so valuable now? Why is data so valuable, And that's when I started to realize that, these people that are creative, they're building their own platform. They're not relying on managers or agents to pimp them out as it used to be, right? So they have to know the data. They have to be able to build their own platforms and community. And at that point, I was almost looking at it. I started to talk to them about it in this different way, where I'm like, the thing that gives this power, that the thing that makes data sexy or important, is it allows you to be a better storyteller. Because if you know your people more, you can know what stories they want to hear from you, right? So essentially, what Fullscope can do is it helps you to know your people, know everybody who's coming to your broadcasts, how long they're staying, how many hearts they send, screenshots, shares, the comments that they make. It houses all the comments. It actually saves the video and hosts the video for you. And also, we've created an engagement score, like an algorithm based on the actions that you can perform in a broadcast. So now you can look at your top engaged people in not only single broadcasts, but you can also do a date range of of several broadcasts within 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever date range you select, and it will give you your overall data of who your most engaged folks are. And what that does is it helps you to know your people, and the best part of knowing your people is to then connect with your people. So it's not just knowing your people, but it's connecting with your people. So inside of Fullscope, you can not only filter out your most engaged people that come to your broadcast or that come to your collective broadcasts, but you can also tweet them directly. And that's kind of some of the things that people have been loving. Two very clear things. I can know who my most engaged people are, and I can send tweets out to them right away saying, thank you so much for coming to my broadcast, or hey, I just want to thank you for all that you do. And then Fullscope allows you to do some other things. We're actually creating the ability for you to automatically send out a tweet that has your 5 top engaged people that come to your broadcast, so that cool. All of them are tagged and it goes into their news feeds and your news feeds. Right now, people are doing it with our software, but they're doing it manually. Mm-hmm. So we're going to add some of that. There's all sorts of stuff that we're adding in. Like our goal is to add in so the best peak time for your broadcast based on your overall data. Mm-hmm. To know what the best length of time for your broadcasts are based on your overall data. So our goal is to empower the broadcaster to just be a better broadcaster through the data, essentially. I mean that's like a huge part of it, you know.
What seems cool too is, I mean, are you kind of aggregating that data in the back end too? I mean, obviously you'd probably be doing it anonymously, but I mean, are you kind of collecting data of like across all of Periscope? These are the best times and these are the best lengths, and
and we're doing it mostly for the people that are using Fullscope, because the way you use Fullscope is it's a Twitter authorization, right? Twitter off. So they sign up through that, and then so the collective Fullscope data right now is showing, that collectively our broadcasters to date, since we opened this, which was like, I'd say it's probably been now it's been like 3 months or so. Mm-hmm. But the collective like viewership of all of our broadcasters, I think is probably pushing like 6 or 7 million, right? And and that's and what's cool about that is that those are live viewers. It's not like just viewers, like video viewers. These are people that log in and watch and making comments. We can account for we have there are millions of hearts that are sent, and millions upon millions, but also millions of comments too. So we're looking at all of that data to know how we can help the collective community to become better broadcasters too. So that's our goal for this, is to not only help you to know your people, connect with your people, and then build relationships and collaborate with your people too. Because part of the people that are coming to your broadcast are probably people like you, Like if you come to my broadcast, Matt, I might try to collaborate with you to say, hey, let's do something together where we do, an event, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we've been doing now, which is this, it just grew from this, was now we've been the analytics behind these events where several broadcasters get together and do an event on like New Year's Eve, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say 50 broadcasters get together and do a scope day all about New Year's Eve in different parts of the world that they're in. And so we've been doing that, and we've been the software behind some of these things, and we've been featured in Newsweek because of some of the data that's been happening. Periscope, Periscope actually blogged about it too, some of the data that we collected for some of these events. And so just from that, we've been kind of a back engine for these events to show the reach of these events. Mm-hmm. And the cool part of all that is that now brands are getting wind of Periscope as a viable place for actually promoting their content using these content creators, these Periscopers. And not just one singular Periscoper, because that's not where the value is, And that's the mistake that a lot of people make, is that they think of one Periscoper should promote, McDonald's, and they don't, eat McDonald's, right? That's kind of like what typically happens, in the influencer world. But now instead of one influencer, we look at the collective of influencers. So why don't you instead of finding one person, tap into Fullscope's database that maybe has 30 people that are all within the health niche, so that we can run an event for your brand in the health niche, right? So now it's targeted. Now it's a larger reach, and it just makes more sense. So that's this kind of next step we're doing with the platform, is allowing people to create events.
Yeah, and one thing that just kind of popped in my head as you were talking about all this too is, if somebody has a large Periscope following, they actually have a way to quantify that to potential sponsors. Let's say somebody that's doing a lot of Periscopes wants to go get some sponsorships and mention some, do some product placements in their Periscopes. Well, they can take this data that they're collecting in Full Scope TV, go to a potential sponsor and say, look, here's the data right in front of your face. This is how much people are engaging with me when I do my content. Do you want to pay me money to talk about your product now?
Yeah, and in fact, that's what people were doing. They were coming to me and Gagan, my CTO, while we were at the booth, and they were like, "Hey, I just want to say thank you, because without your software, I wouldn't have been able to go to my board and say, I'm going to start using Periscope, because without the data, they don't know what's happening. In fact, the Monterey Aquarium, they're using Full Scope, so the guy." This guy from Monterey Aquarium said, "Here, I do Periscopes for the Monterey Aquarium, and we started doing them. And as soon as we showed them your graphs and kind of what was happening with them, they immediately were like, oh, okay, yeah, go for it. So it was really great to hear that you, like a brand, like a big, relatively large company like the Monterey Aquarium, they were doing this, they were actually using it, and they needed to, they were able to rationalize, their board was able to rationalize it based on the data. So, and also the singular broadcasters now can go and say, well, yeah, but look at what we're doing. This is our reach. We're inside Full Scope. Yeah, this is our reach. So you're right. And then some people have been saying, can Full Scope integrate with other social analytic tools? Because the next phase would be like to take it, bridge it into these larger social tools that say, all right, well, now I see how you're doing Periscope, but how does that relate to what's happening in Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the next phase too, in terms of like connectivity, maybe to those next, to those platforms as well. So,
yeah, I was just taking some notes there.
Yeah,
I mean, you're making my wheels spin. I'm thinking of like all sorts of ideas. Now, let me ask you this. What do you think is sort of the trajectory of Periscope? I feel like, 6 months ago or something, everybody was really, really hot on Periscope. Obviously, it was just kind of getting launched, just kind of released. Everybody was talking about it. It seemed like, my phone was constantly blowing up with Periscope notifications. Yeah. It feels like it's simmered down a little bit since then. Yeah. So I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's only growing? Do you think it's getting more popular? Do you think it's sort of weeding out the people that weren't serious about building a platform on it, and now just the real serious people are sticking with it? I mean, where do you think that trajectory is going? What do you think sort of is the future with it?
Yeah, totally. So I think when it first started, everybody was signing up. And now I think it's still probably doing relatively well with signups, but I think it's now getting into more of it is kind of separating out the people that are not so, just the random people that are just signing up and not, as you said, using it for a platform. I think that's happening, but I also think it's opening up the doors to what is going to be how it's opening up the doors to how people are going to consume content. They're already consuming content on Snapchat, Instagram. I mean, if you look at the next generation to come up after the millennials, which I can't remember the name of that generation,
couldn't tell you.
But they're not watching they're not even watching. We're watching Netflix. They're not watching Netflix. So it's interesting because that even this live stream from your phone, from your TV, is probably going to be less and less, and it's more going to be from your tablets, your iPhones, and possibly now that Periscope can be streamed into Apple TV, it's just I see a lot of growth there. I see like this is how what people are going to consume. So I feel like we're at an early stage of almost like what television was and movies were 100 years ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually didn't know that you can stream Periscope straight into an Apple TV. Is there like an Apple TV Periscope app now or something?
Yes, I believe there is.
That's fascinating because look at the way podcasts almost are taking over radio now. Like podcasts are the new radio.
Exactly.
Where you used to go and listen to, AM 1080 for whatever your talk radio or something.
Yeah.
And now people can kind of say, I want to listen to this exact topic today, and I want to learn this subject. I don't want to listen to whoever's talking, I don't want to listen to that topic they're talking about on the radio. I want to pick what I listen to from here on out. And I feel like, Periscope could be that next sort of iteration of you're probably going to start seeing like Periscope celebrities that they have their own channels and they tune in at the same time every day. And people are watching them from their TVs at home.
Well, think about this. You can actually have one Periscope account that can stream out many different broadcasters. So if I could give you my Periscope account, Matt, and you could log in and you could broadcast from my account, I could broadcast from my account, and 100 other people could. And
so it's almost like creating a station.
The power of that, exactly. You can create almost like a station, a channel, right? That a station would make sense, like a media source for a specific niche. And I've been seeing more and more of this. And in fact, like a guy that I was having a conversation with, he has the largest personal trainer Periscope channel out there. And he has millions upon millions of hearts. He's got, I think, hundreds of thousands of followers on it. And it's because he has more than one person being run through that specific channel, right? And so they're building up this collective power, right? And I kind of had the same idea too by having broadcasters come together to do events, but still using their own account. But this actually brings it to a whole new level of singular TV shows or singular TV channels, right? Where they're specifically on specific topics.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's really going to be, we're going to see what this does and where this goes, because, right now people still like TV because they like stories, but very few kids watch television. They get stories in other ways. They get stories that are real, instead of necessarily like TV shows. So there could be this movement of making great storytellers, right? First off, like where we have a whole population of great storytellers that are coming out of this. I also think that TV might be turning towards this eventually. So maybe, like how, there are soap operas, right? Well, what if they were to figure out how to tap into live stream on your phone and now creating, these platforms on, like periscoping an actual TV show, right? Through Periscope. I think that, a fiction-based show, I think that's where things might be going, because just like you see celebrities doing podcasts, I think we're going to see TV shows, things on NBC, CBS, ABC, they'll move into Periscope. They'll move into this space. Is my kind of thing of where I think things might be going.
Yeah, I mean, you already see some TV shows that kind of embrace their website as well, where they say like have the the dual media experience or whatever. I think The Walking Dead does this, where you can actually go to the Walking Dead site while the show is airing, and there's like other content going on their site while this show is airing.
Right.
And I could see stuff like that popping up that's also complementary to shows that are airing on TV. Just the way like you see like if you watch like our Survivor or The Bachelor or any of those kinds of shows, throughout the entire show, there's like little hashtags flashing on the bottom of the screen about what's going on at certain parts of the show, so that people can continue the conversation of that show over on Twitter.
Right.
I see very similar stuff happening on Periscope as well.
Yeah.
So I think
it's an interesting place to be, and I think we're going to see more and more of that. And that's why it's interesting to be in this space of being the only analytic tool out there to measure Periscope.
Yeah.
And that's why it was really great to meet the Periscope team. It was really great to meet the CEO. They're not sure what's going to be happening. We're not sure what's going to be happening. But I've said this many times to them that we're here essentially just to help them with filling in this gap, because they have so many other things that they're dealing with, right? Mm-hmm. But I do kind of see the writing on the wall, and as such, that's why we're continuing to build this out in that way. And right now, it's not a money thing. It's a passion thing. It's like, let's continue to give the broadcasters as much as we can to help them become better broadcasters, become better storytellers. And that's kind of a vision. That's kind of like I kind of tried to figure out this vision last year when I did a, build your audience with live video. I did, a creative live all about it. And I started going into this, going in this direction. But ultimately, I think that's where my vision is. It's to just help broadcasters help people that want to have a platform and want to become broadcasters to be better storytellers, to build their own channels, their own platforms, more and more and more. So
that's awesome. We got very futurist on this episode. Hopefully we'll look back at this episode a year from now and be like, wow, everything we talked about is exactly what played out.
yeah, exactly. This is going to be really interesting to see what even happens in this next year. I mean, I was having conversations about this. I mean, it's just a really, really interesting time, and it's for me, it's like this, like I'm nervous while at the same time I'm excited, and it's like, just to see what's going to happen,
Yeah. So I actually want to shift gears real quick and talk about another topic real briefly, and then I have a few questions that I'd like to ask everybody.
Okay.
So before we hit record on this, and if you're a member of Authority Insider, you could probably see the little bonus footage from before we actually recorded the podcast, but we were talking a little bit about Snapchat. Mm-hmm. And we were both talking about how you and I have both kind of been starting to see some of the benefits, because I've always seen Snapchat as like, A, for either sexting,
yes,
which I know a lot of people probably use it for, or right, B, just like the very teeny bopper sort of text messaging platform that everybody's using it for. I didn't really see the sort of marketing perspective of it until I had a really good sit down chat with Sean Vossler a few episodes back.
Yeah.
And so you and I were actually talking about Snapchat a little bit before this episode. And I was curious on your thoughts on what you enjoy about Snapchat and where you see that going.
So Snapchat, I think, is, I think it's probably going to be, it's considered, I think, was it the app of the year last year?
It might have been. I have no idea.
I personally think that Snapchat is huge. I think it's awesome. I think that once you start looking at all the cool things you can do and how it's tied into telling your story, mm-hmm, you can use that and repurpose that. So, what I think is kind of cool is that, we could take Periscope, broadcasts and roll them into your story that's put on Snapchat, mm-hmm, so that's what I think it's this really brilliant way to not only connect with people, but the story is the bigger element. It's like the perfect way to kind of drive people through your story. Now, I have to admit, I don't use it enough, and I'm just starting, but I've been really loving how to use it. Like that, I'm on a train, I can take a quick video, I can take a quick image, I can put an overlay, text on that image. I can, it's like it helps me, it gives me tools to make my story better, And I think there is going to be I know some people that are making courses all about it right now, of course, because, it's about how to craft your story, I think, the best, and then how to get people in to where you're wanting them to go. Yeah. As anything, it's about how to have a call to action without feeling spammy and weird, And Periscopers, that's what we've been focused on, like how to create a clear, concise call to action that really provides help and value. But the same thing needs to be applied to Snapchat as well, in terms of like, where are you going to send someone, But I think that is another media aspect of telling your story, the imagery, the video. And what's really interesting now is that video with no sound is getting popular too. Because oftentimes in Snapchat, if you're watching it, you don't necessarily have your volume up.
No.
So oftentimes you see a video in Snapchat that has no sound to it. Or, right now what's cool is that Twitter actually started playing broadcasts, Periscope broadcasts, in their news feed now. So you don't have to go to Periscope, the app, to see someone's broadcast if you're following them on Twitter. And that video, that broadcast, which is live, will play live, but you won't hear it. And so I feel like there's this next evolution that's going to happen, this next thing where video without sound is going to be, what do we do to capitalize on video without sound?
And we've been seeing that on Facebook already. I don't know if you've noticed it, but on Facebook, you're starting to see people trying to figure out how to grab your attention without using sound, because obviously on Facebook, as you scroll through that news feed, those videos start to autoplay.
Yes, exactly. And they autoplay on Twitter as well now.
So you're seeing a lot of people now that are, they're running Facebook ads and they're doing stuff on Twitter, and there'll be text flashing across the screen that says, hey, like if you ever see like the Business Insider stuff, they put subtitles on all their videos, so you don't even have to turn it on. You can just sit there and watch the video and read what's going on it.
Yeah. Exactly. I think there's going to be a lot of that, because that's how things are being consumed. So you got to look at it from the consumption of the media, and how it's going to help the consumer to know if that content's good for them or not.
Yeah, and it's so true too, because a lot of times I might be lying in bed first thing in the morning, pop open my phone, watch some, like flip through Facebook or something. I don't want the videos to automatically start playing sound, or I check out what's going on Snapchat. I don't want the videos to start blasting. I usually listen to them on silent or watch them on silent just to kind of get a feel. So I mean that's very true. That I think that's something that people really need to focus on is how can you still make your video engaging without playing the sound. So I think that's important, and I think you're so right with Snapchat being like, it's all about that story. I've only used it once or twice ever to text message back and forth with people. But I love sitting there and kind of getting that behind the scenes look into people's day. Like if I'm I can see it being really fun on a road trip, or
totally,
when I'm at a conference or something, just every little stop that I go to, or every new person I'm networking with at a event, doing a little quick snap with them, and then going back at the end of the day and watching through my story. And you can actually download that whole story, and it makes a little video on your phone.
Upload it to Facebook, upload it to YouTube, repurpose the content, put it on your blog. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with it, and it's just like how to be creative, how to think creatively around those elements. Now with this, I mean, this is how content is being consumed. If you think about Vine, 6 seconds of video and what you can do with that video. Think about, a 2-minute video on Facebook. That's probably one of the best engaged, that's probably the best length for an engaged video. People are understanding that they have to create content that's short, consumable, and, that's why your story can be a longer-ish video, but it's going to be snaps of your day, not one singular long watching video of your whole day. And that's how we're consuming content now, and it's a very interesting time to be around right now with how we are consuming content. So what were those questions that you had, though? What were they? What were you thinking?
As far as what?
You said you had 3 questions you were going to ask me.
I did?
Yeah.
3 questions?
Yeah.
No, I have a few questions that I like to ask everybody at the end of the show.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's what it was.
So yeah, we'll get to those. Actually, let's just jump straight over to those then.
Okay.
So first of all, why do you think it's important to build a personal brand?
I think it's important to build a personal brand because the idea is that you have to build trust. You have to build almost like a transparency and a window into your business. And by creating a personal brand, they know who you are, and it's that ultimate way to establish a relationship with someone without having to necessarily meet them face to face. But the personal brand is why people buy. They're not buying something, or they're not consuming your content because of the content, really. They're consuming it because of who you are, the reason you're making the content, the vision you have for it, and then the content, right? If they want to know how you've gotten to where you've gotten, and then the content speaks for itself. The content's like, oh, okay, so this is why Casey has been creating this and things like that. So I feel like the personal brand is the platform that anything can get behind. Whether you create new courses, whether you're doing sponsorship, whether you're creating coaching programs, the personal brand is going to be how you are perceived in the world. And with such a socially good world that we're living in, and how how necessary it is to be transparent, it's more acceptable to be in present and aware and out there because of social media than not. So you're already creating a personal brand every single time you post something on Twitter, every single time you post something on Facebook. You may not think you are because you think you're quote unquote anonymous, but you're not. Mm-hmm. And so it's about that social responsibility at that point to really tap into who you are. So we're like forcing people to really figure out who they are if they're using these social media platforms. And by doing so, you create a personal brand, and then you can do anything with that brand, whether that's, work for a company, but you still have a certain, level of your own unique qualities and philosophies. They probably oftentimes they'll hire you because of those elements. Or you are creating your own authority, and you're creating your own training products and coaching and things like that, or software, whatever you're creating. The brand is what people gravitate towards, the personal connection. And you don't have to be anybody you're not. You just have to be the best you possible to start making those connections with people. So I think everybody has somebody that will connect with them, and it's just a question of tapping into that audience.
Yeah. So no matter what you do online, no matter how you put yourself out there, you have a personal brand, whether you like it or not. So you might as well tailor it to be a strong one.
Exactly. Thank you for saying exactly what I said, but narrowing it to like a really good sentence. Yes, exactly. Yeah, you already have a personal brand. You might as well just tailor it to be exact to how it helps whatever audience you're trying to attract, right?
Absolutely. So I always like to get a book recommendation or two. What sort of books are you reading right now, or what's kind of your favorite business book that you like to recommend?
I'll just talk about this book because it's right in front of me. The School of Greatness, Lewis Howes, great book. It's what's interesting is and you probably have this book as well somewhere. He's pulling it out there. He's got probably a handful of them. Yeah, he's looking at it. What's nice about this book is that it's shows you the greatness of people that he's interviewed in his podcast. So it's not necessarily all about Lewis Howes. It's more about what he's kind of the things that he's learned from interviewing the coolest people, the right people. Right. Exactly. So that's one. I mean, these are books that you have, obviously.
Yeah, I actually have not read this one yet. I have my copy, but I have not yet read it. So this is definitely up high on my list of next to read books. The School of Greatness by Lewis Howes. What was the other one you were about to say?
Well, there is one I'm reading right now, but it's in my bag.
You don't have to actually show it.
It's a book by Mark Cuban. It's a short book.
It's Winning at the Game of Business.
Winning at the Game of Business. Yeah,
it's a good one. It's actually, that book is actually technically repurposed blog post, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and it just goes to show that you can use that methodology to build, a pretty decent book. But it's really short, it's clear, it's concise. It's a really good book. I definitely recommend that one. And then if I had to recommend another one, if you're in the world of business, I have Launch, Jeff Walker's Launch book here. I also have .com Secrets. I have these books that you probably also have. He's pulling them out too. Yeah, exactly. Launch. There's Matt's book, and .com Secrets. So hey, this is it exactly. These are kind of some books that.
.com Secrets is a great book. It's the thing I love. I haven't read Launch yet. Oh yeah, I'm a collector, but I don't quite get through them all as quickly. I buy 2 books a day, and I read about a book. I try to read about a book a day, but I usually read about a book every other day. Mm-hmm. And nice. I buy about 2 to 3 books a day. So if you do the math, my pace isn't fast enough to keep up with my buying.
Yeah, right.
But .com Secrets this is one that I actually have read, and this one is talk about actionable stuff. Like you can literally read this book and say, I'm going to go do that right now and actually take action on the stuff in this book, which is what I love so much about that. It's just like, here is something you can go do right now in your business to improve sales, and you can go literally implement it in your business right now.
And Launch is the same way. It gives you this nice blueprint for, okay, well, if I really wanted to figure out, okay, what should this particular video be about? If I did the traditional launch methodology, what should this video be about? What should this video be about? And it's really helpful. So I think, and I was using it to kind of take the concept of launching and how to apply it to webinars and doing a webinar launch system as well. Like, what should this webinar be about? This webinar. So it's like having some of these like critical tools will help you to like in any kind of element, right? So yeah, these are great books, especially if you're like doing anything in business. You need mindset, you need some strategy, you need tactical strategy. That's what these can give you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool. So my final question then is, where can people go from here? Where can they go learn more about you?
Well, you can go to CaseyZeman.com. You can just check out my blog at CaseyZeman.com. It's Casey Zeman on CaseyZemanOnline.com. Or just go into Casey Zeman. We'll get you into the blog. If you wanted to learn more about webinars, you can go to webinarminicourse.com. If you want to learn more about fullscope.tv, you can go to fullscope.tv and check it out if you're a broadcaster. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Coming into the CaseyZeman.com will take you into where you want to go.
Very cool. Well, there's probably about 10 more topics that I wish we could have dove into on this call, but we'll save it for round 2. For interview number 5 with you.
Yeah, interview number 5, round 5.
So we'll save that we'll save some of that stuff for the next one. But I appreciate you taking the time and hanging out with us today. And thanks for all the insights on Periscope and Snapchat and brand building and all that good stuff. So thanks again.
Of course. Thank you, Matt, and thanks to your listeners.